Great. So, good evening, everybody. My name is CJ. It's my pleasure to have you all. And today, what we are going to do is to explore if whether you're a speaker professionally, whether you speak for charities or nonprofit organizations, or if you are a trainer or facilitator, or if you need to present something to your boss at work. Hopefully, this will be something that is useful for you. What we want to do for today is how we can inspire and generate resonance as a speaker slash presenter slash facilitator. Right, the keyword here is to generate resonance. Now, a lot of times when we talk about a presentation or speeches or speaking in general, we tend to think about the speech craft. What are the things you need to say? How you need to act? How's your body language coming across to the audience? We tend to focus a lot of that, and those are great. Now, if you really want to gain a lot of resonance or better resonance with your audience, what is needed is what are some of the things that you need to do prior to speaking. You probably will need to make some preparations. There are a lot of pre-speaking work. There are a lot of preparation work. They probably will need to reach out to some members of your audience or some people that you know will be in charge of that event before your session. So we'll be looking more into that. We'll also be looking at what are the kinds of content that you can shape or come up with that will resonate with your audience as well. So there's a lot of work that happens before the actual gig, right? So these are some of the things. So let me handle a few clicks, and here we go. I'm sure Tara has done a good job introducing myself, so let me skip this page and let me go to this. Now, if you need to conduct a keynote presentation or workshop, what would be the critical step to build resonance with your audience? Now, this is what we want to do. In your chat boxes, could you type your answers to this in the chat box, but don't hit the enter button yet, right? So if you need to conduct keynote presentation or workshop, what will be a critical step to build resonance with the audience? What do you think? What do you feel? Right, don't click enter yet. Thank you. Just type in. We'll get everybody to hit enter at the same time. Right, just 10 more seconds. All right, no, it's okay. Right, all right, hit enter. Thank you. Relevance, great. Know what your audience needs. Fantastic. Fantastic. What is a problem that needs to be solved? Yeah. Know your audience. Great stuff. Right. So yeah, absolutely. If you really want to build resonance, it's really about your audience. If you want to get a message across, it's really about your audience, how they perceive your message. It's not just about the presentations that we make. It's even in our day-to-day communication. It's not about what you want to express. It's how the other party understand as your message is, or understand your message as you intended it to be. So it really is about your audience. And someone mentioned about, Desi mentioned about what is a problem that needs to be addressed or solved. So you probably will need to know what is the top of the mind things that are in the audience so that you really resonate with them. Right, absolutely, great. Now, so if you want to start with addressing the issues, the problems of the audience, probably, this is what Simon Sinek says, you want to start with why. Now, it's not about the audience's why yet. It's about your why. It's about how you want to, how this presentation of yours, or how this workshop, how this speech is important to you first, right? So as a speaker in in doing your presentation, what are some of the things that resonate with yourself? What makes the topic important and resonant to yourself first? So when you're making that presentation, we probably will want to think about, okay, so I'm going to give a talk today, just like what I'm doing right now. So what will be some of the goals that I want to have for my talk, for my topic, for that event? So let's relook at some of the SMART goals. Now, I'm sure a lot of people here know what a SMART goal is, right? It's specific, measurable, achievable, and so on. The question is, in SMART goals, if you want to set a SMART goal, which of these letters would you want to start first? Do you want to start with specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, or time-bound? So again, if you don't mind, just type into the chat box which letter within SMART. If you want to set a SMART goal, which letter would you want to start first? Type in and don't. Thank you. This is for the rest of us, don't click enter yet. We just want to make sure that we are not influenced by someone else thinking. Right, go ahead and press enter. Right, relevant, realistic, Natasha R as well. Relevant, wow. Also relevant. Oh, okay, great minds think alike. So I'm going to ask someone to share with us why relevant. D, you just joined. Would you like to unmute and share with us why would you want to start with relevant or realistic?
Hi, good evening. I would like to start with realistic. I think it's most closely associated with the why. Like if I choose something, it's going to be something that I think has a reason or is solving
Yep.
a problem that
Mm-hmm.
it's realistic for me to do that's going to be well received, not just because I want to do it.
Right, great. Thank you. Thank you. It is. So the first thing, it really resonates with the why is and what outcomes do I want to achieve with this presentation and why are they important to me? So the thing about, if you really want to make a good presentation, as I said, you can do a presentation as a professional keynote speaker. You can also do a presentation to your work group, to your colleagues, to your bosses. So whichever the case, that presentation has to resonate with you first. It has to mean something to yourself first before it can resonate with other people. It has to be important to you first. So why are we doing this in the first place? So is it relevant to yourself, right? So that's how we want to start. Now, the second thing is we'll be looking at, it's not about how achievable it is. It's about how can we make it achievable. So a lot of times when we set SMART goals, we say, okay, well, let's set an achievable goal. On the other hand, we get a lot of people who say that let's set some stretch goals. Let's challenge ourselves and set stretch goals that really stretches us to a limit. So which is which? Now, whichever the case, if it's a stretch goal, let's assume it's going to be a stretch goal, then what steps must I take in order to reach those outcomes, for me to achieve those outcomes? So how are you going to make that goal achievable? Right, so that's a how part of setting goal in the goal setting, and we're doing this in a context of making a presentation or a speech that resonates with others. So if you want to make a great presentation, if you want to impress upon your audience, in the achievable part, it's about how are you going to do that? What's the first thing that you may want to do? And earlier on in our chat boxes, we mentioned about that we would probably want to know more about our audiences. We want to resonate with them. We want to solve the problems that they're facing. So if you want to make that presentation wow and more create more resonance, then maybe the first step in doing that is talk to your audience, talk to some key opinion leaders in your audience and find out what problems they have and how are you going to help them solve those problems. Right, the third part is, and SMART is about being measurable, and there are different shades of being measurable. Usually we think about measurable as quantifiable. We can count them, like how much money can you make, how much money can you save, how much time do you need, how much time can you save, etc. So those are the quantifiable parts of measurable. And sometimes, especially if you're giving presentations, especially if you're talking about life skills, mental well-being, mental resilience, conflict resolution, those kind of things. You don't always get goals that are highly quantifiable or easily quantifiable. Now, I do a lot of corporate training. I train a lot of people in soft skills, and if you really want to pinpoint, now let's say we do a workshop on conflict management. And normally before the workshop, people tend to have lots of fights verbally with one another. Things get bogged down because people are fighting, they're not collaborating. And after the workshop, we find that people are fighting less. They still fight, but it's less. And they tend to discuss more and collaborate a bit more. So you can see some kind of improvements. But it's very difficult, it's very challenging to say that, oh, because we made these improvements, we have a return on investment of X amount. It probably is achievable, but it's way too challenging to achieve to a number on that. But putting aside quantifiable, certain things are observable, right? You can see what's before and what's after. So if you want to set a goal for your presentation, what is it that you like your audience to do after your presentation, and why is it important to you as the presenter? Right? What are some of the things that you like to observe in yourself and the audience before and after that presentation? And the third part about being measurable, it's not about just observable, it's palpable, it's how you feel. Right, and when we talk about setting a goal for a presentation, finding your why for that presentation, how do you feel about the topic? Now, there are certain topics that sometimes can be controversial, divisive. There's certain topics that really touches your heart. There's certain topics that really matters to you and your community that you serve. So what could be those issues that matter most to you? Right? How do you feel about the topic? So those are some of the areas that you think about. How do I measure my success if I were to make this presentation? Is there something that I do this that will give me some kind of quantifiable impact? If not, can I observe the contrast between before I do it and after I do it? Or at the very least, how do I feel about the topic? Right? So that's a third thing to think about yourself first. And the last, not the last, the last second one is time frame. If you're making that presentation, what would be some kind of milestones? This tie into the achievable part. What steps must I take to achieve the outcomes? And if that's the case, what is my milestones? Now, the thing is, just for example, I'm having this presentation to you all this evening. Now, this is the deadline that I have to give that presentation. And obviously, I cannot be preparing this presentation, say, 5 minutes ago, right? I will need to have certain kind of milestones to think about, okay, this is a topic. And just some backstory about this topic as well, because Tara came to me when I was making this presentation as a 15 minute presentation to the VSAI, Virtual Speakers Association International. And today we are going to make it into a 2-hour session. So from 15 minutes to 2 hours, that's a kind of a huge jump. So I will need to make some modifications to the presentation. I probably could not do it 5 minutes before we start. There's got to be some cadence. There's got to be some time frame and milestones to think about, okay, when should I have a longer, more detailed outline for myself so I can plan for it? When should I start to make modifications to the presentation deck as you're seeing right now? Right. So what are some of the milestones do I have to meet? and what happens when I'm lagging. Now, I'm sure that some of us are very inspired by some of the famous speakers all around the world. And one of the most memorable presentations, business presentations that I can recall was the late Steve Jobs making the first iPhone 1 introduction, right? So that was great. Now, the thing is, we're not going into the video about the iPhone 1. Bless his heart, bless his soul. What we're going to think about is, how long did Steve Jobs prepare for that iPhone 1 presentation? And that was in 2007, 2007, right? That's like almost 20 years ago. How long did Steve Jobs make? What is the length of the preparation that Steve Jobs had for that presentation? Right, without going to the polls in the chat box. Basically, Steve Jobs had about 6 months. It took about 6 months from start to the ending, modification in scripting, modification in a lot of different aspects. They didn't even have the product ready when most of the presentation were being planned. So it's a long process, and the bigger the presentation is, the more impactful you want it to be, the more at stakes that there are. Probably you'll need a longer time. Oh, 9 months. Okay. So it's going to be 9 months. Okay. I thought it's 6 months. Right. Yeah, it's a long time, in other words. Most of us will say, how do I have those time? We probably will have 6 or 9 months to prepare for a presentation. And what I'm just getting at is, you probably will need some planning. You probably will need some milestones to have some sanity check to find out how are you getting on in that presentation. And also, we life sometimes get in the way. We get disrupted by many things. So if we lag behind our schedule, that's normal. And the question is, how are we going to, what if you find yourself lagging, what steps are you going to take to rectify it? In the very worst scenario, you may want to postpone your presentation. In the worst case scenario, but if you're not able to postpone it, then what are you going to do to make sure that you are ready for that presentation? Right. So that's some of the things to think about. And finally, the specific part, make everything specific. Specifically, what outcomes are you going to have? Specific steps are you going to take? You may not want to map up all the steps right at the beginning, but what is the specific first couple of steps that you are going to take? How is the whole event, presentation, or speech measurable to you as a goal? And what kinds of time frames and milestones are you going to have? So that's on the preparation part. So, and this is what